Greetings, brave adventurers, and welcome to Horror Story Friday. Today's the day where I bring you the very best of the very worst, so that we can all experience the pain together. Look, I know that you all love this more than any other videos I make, so I guess we're all just masochists at the end of the day. But we should probably just get right to the stories. So without further ado, grab yourself a seat around the fire as we dig in to these horrifying tales of role-playing. Our first story comes to us by the user Danger Noodle Jorm, or is it Yorm? We'll see. And it's entitled, Everything That Can Go Wrong Did Go Wrong, the Worst Session 0 Ever. It's about a story of a DM who tried to do the right thing, but sometimes even the best intentions go awry. Tale start. This is the only campaign that I've ever run which I had to stop before it even started. It began on Roll20. I was running a homebrew game requested by a regular player of mine. He DMs a lot for his other group, and the campaign he's playing in with me is only at level 4. He's never played above level 6, so he asked me to run a balls-to-the-walls level 20 one-shot. Sounds fun. I thought through it and decided that a tournament arc would be a good way to get some insanely powerful characters together. I set it in a giant demiplane so they could basically do whatever they wanted to that reality. Like a massive soft playground for kids, but with fireballs. Because I needed some mighty enemies and a reason for this particular group to gather, I pitched that they were competing on behalf of the material plane against the champions from other realms. In other words, they had to play races native to the material plane, no genasi or bird people. I also limited Wish to just the effects of replicating spells. I want to be clear that I listed all of these rules in the advert for the game. I recruit the players, set up a session 0, and we're good. An hour before we start, Mr. Regular calls and tells me his daughter has broken her leg, so he's out. That's understandable. Go take care of your daughter. She's doing well now, just to let you know. I'm glad they included that. Thank you. It was already a bad omen, but the other players joined. Our cast, the lawyer, hated anything homebrew, but joined a homebrew game. The donkey, extremely stubborn, no room for compromise. The weeb, the only redeemable character here, probably including me. Wait, hang on, the weeb is for once not the problem? Well, weebs, you're off the hook for today. The sexist, only joined for enough time to find out I'm a woman and tell me he doesn't play with girls. Yeah, real mature. What are you, 5? The lawyer kicks it off by telling me this isn't how a demiplane works. I tell him he's wrong because I'm the DM. Excuse me, because this plane was created specifically for the tournament by a god. He grumbles. The weeb wants to play a fallen Aasimar. I was fine with that. There was a good plot hook for conflict with the Celestia team. The lawyer argues that Aasimar shouldn't be allowed because they're plane touched. I point out they are born on the material plane, and he wants to play a tiefling, technically also descended from a power from another plane. Lawyer doubles down, and Donkey backs him, so now neither weeb nor lawyer get to play what they want. Ugh, shut up, my guy. The DM said it was fine. That's really what matters here. Weeb says he wants to play a ranger. Donkey reveals she's also a min-maxer, and is firm in her belief that rangers suck. That might have been true in, the early days of 5e, but it's way less true anymore. Whatever. I make it clear that no one will be punished for playing a weaker class, or for choosing to do something for roleplay reasons instead of combat prowess. But they've already ruined his idea for him, and he goes quiet for a few minutes. Donkey decides she wants to play a cleric of a god she's homebrewed herself. I'm not really down with players assuming they can add their own homebrew, but I'm willing to hear it out. She describes basically Lyra, goddess of joy. I suggest she follows her, but no, she wants her special homebrew thing. Lawyer is practically frothing at the mouth. I suggest a compromise that where Donkey comes from, Lyra is called something different, the homebrew name, and worshipped a little differently, but she's still the same goddess. Nope, they're not happy with that. Look, okay, I've used a homebrew deity for one of my characters before, but I okayed it with the DM before I even suggested it. Weeb has been quietly doing his own thing, and comes back with a character sheet. It's filled with homebrew magic items.
If she's allowed to homebrew, I should be too.
I tell him no, and not to take the piss. He goes off and brings me back, basically, Naruto, a half-monk, half-warlock who was rejected by his village, but now rules it. It's finally a character I can work with. I tell him it's good, and he and Donkey start nerding out together. At least you can bond over Naruto. It breaks the tension enough that we can start to get back to making a character sheet for everyone. Lawyer decides to play a wizard.
I'll just wish that we win.
No, you won't. Wish is limited. He goes off again about how unfair that is and how badly I've nerfed him, as if the basic uses of Wish aren't still very strong. Also, it was in the advertisement. You knew this before you joined, Mr. Lawyer. Ha, lawyered. Oh, that's an old reference. Donkey hands her sheet in while he's popping off. I think she was hoping that I wouldn't notice the bard spells she's picked.
My goddess lets me cast them.
No, she doesn't.
How am I meant to make a character if you have all these preconceived notions of our world?
That's what homebrew is, Sweaty. And I was done. I kicked Donkey and Lawyer from the Discord server, invited Weeb to fill a spot in one of my regular campaigns, and never looked back. I should have shut it down when they bullied Weeb out of his character. Yeah, probably. But I was in denial, convinced I could claw it back. And tail end. You see, this was an instance where the Weeb was not the problem. Making basically Naruto, that's not going to work in every game, but it definitely sounded like this was the perfect game for something like that. All of these players had so many options and possibilities, and all they wanted to do was argue. In Lawyer's case, he should have read the advertisement. In Sexist's case, he should cease existing as a human. Just stop. Go away. We don't want you. As for Donkey, I think she just wanted to cause problems. Sometimes you wake up and you choose violence that day. And she did. Props to the DM for eventually just kicking the problems and inviting the Weeb to regular games. That actually sounds like you might have gained a good friend. His original concept sounded really fun, and how it would have played in that, yeah. That was a good gain. Getting a good role player, getting someone with good character concepts. I like that. Let's move on to the next story. Next up, we have a story posted by the user 6 Feet Blunder. It's titled 40 plus minutes between player turns, and it is the first time on this channel that I will be covering the system GURPS. You've probably all heard of it. It can be good. This is not how you make it good. Tale start. Buckle in, this is a long one, and it's actually safe for work. Yay, finally. I'm not sure how well versed everyone is here on GURPS, General Universal Role-Playing System. It's supposed to be an alternate to D&D, but that is where this story takes place. See, what's fun about GURPS is you're supposed to take out little bits and pieces of it and you can then apply it to almost any other RP system. That's not what happens here. For everyone that doesn't know, the system revolves around D6s. Oh, I usually love D6 systems. You roll 3d6 for pretty much everything, and unlike D&D, you have to roll underscores in comparison to over. Hey, Call of Cthulhu is like that too. So if you had to pass a DC 15 check in D&D, you'd have to get higher than a 15 on 1d20. For GURPS, you have to roll under 15 on 3d6. I won't get into the details of the system too much, but generally GURPS has a lot of flaws to it, along with its benefits. Yes it does. There are many flaws to GURPS, but the biggest one is combat. Combat is an absolute slog. Balancing encounters is beyond tedious since there are no challenge ratings, and monsters are, for the most part, hyper-optimized, since you have skills for literally everything from fishing to sword fighting, and monsters generally are only made for combat. And combat is one of the best systems in GURPS to just leave out and use someone else's combat. The two biggest problems being that... 1. The scale of time for a turn in combat is 1 second. 1 second! Spells have casting times ranging from 1 second to literal minutes and hours. Pulling out an arrow from a bow is a second. Knocking an arrow is a second. Shooting a bow is a second. So player turns in combat can just be doing one thing. It's not unheard of for a spellcaster or an archer to do nothing for their turn but aim, start casting a spell, continue casting a spell, since some take multiple seconds up to minutes or hours. Different between D&D is that every class has the option to do multiple things in combat on their turn, whereas in GURPS you could literally just pass your turn up because you are doing something other than slapping. And this is why you just toss out the combat wholesale. Just nope, none of that. None here, please. 2. Enemies have death checks. This seems like it's not a horrible thing, but let me explain. In D&D, when an enemy hits 0 hit points, they just die. Well, not technically... whatever, it's not worth arguing about. GURPS is not like that. They have checks to stay conscious, to stay alive, to not be stunned. And since you roll against your health roll for these checks, a monster that has 10 HP could end up surviving to negative 50 HP, which is total body annihilation if they get lucky with their rolls. So a goblin that has 7 HP in GURPS could effectively get to negative 42 HP before it just outright explodes into hot salsa. Generally, it doesn't come down to this, but the chance is always there. Sorry, hot salsa kinda slayed me a little. These generally make combat a slog, because what normally would be like a 2 or 3 turn combat in D&D can turn into 5 to 10 turns of combat in GURPS. Now to today's story. Our GM wanted to do a large-scale combat, like a party of 5 defending a city from an incoming invading army. Ooh, classic. That sounds like a lot of fun. An army of 500. I lied. It sounds like misery. Now, to our luck, he had a different group of town defenders defending 2 of the other 3 entrances to the town. We only had to defend 1 of them. This turned out to be 100+ goblins, 6 giants, and giant commander. Oh no, the DM foxed up. This is where the horror began. The monsters were over 100 yards away from us, and there were no groups of enemies. Every enemy had their own initiative, movement, and turn. Oh no. There were also 7 NPCs on our side helping defend. This meant that there were over 100 enemy turns between the players and the enemies. And where the ranged characters could only attack, this meant there were multiple rounds where fighters just sat around while an army moved at 4 yards a turn for 100 yards. Oh no! Every attack a ranged character did on a goblin was multiple rolls. For example, a regular turn was a fast draw roll, a bow skill roll, determining range, hit location, and a bow attack roll. A roll to see if the enemy could see the arrow. What? A dodge roll to evade if they saw it, a damage roll, a health roll for shock, a health roll for staying conscious, and a roll for not dying. This is misery. The first session of combat was a lot of 2 archers firing arrows at a group of approaching enemies with some artillery fire being done, and a fair bit of melee units skipping their turn, and watching the incoming army all take their hundreds of turns. We're on roll 20, so all of these tokens are also being moved. Oh no! Wait, you can actually, lasso select tokens. Oh no, they each have their own initiative. Never mind. That's not gonna work. Oh. The second session was more of that, except now the army was in striking distance. We had slowly whittled the army down from whatever huge number they were to somewhere in the 40s of enemies. Oh, only 40 now. Ugh. We still have over 40 enemies to kill, but there are no groups of enemies, only singular enemies. It means the GM takes 40 minutes between our turns, moving each and every goblin or giant forward, all taking additional attacks, saves, and whatnot. One goblin turn could be anywhere from 4 to 7 rolls of dice. Now, I'm a dice gremlin, but that's too much. He's mentioned a couple of times that
there are so many goblins. How do I make this faster?
My dude, you have a lot of options for that. Crap. Mass combat rules exist in a lot of systems for this exact reason. Ugh. We've given him ideas on how to speed things up, like deaths at 0 HP, put the enemies in groups with a set health pool, and move them as a cohesive unit. But no, every enemy has to pick a hit location, it has to make determined attacks, frenzied defenses, or other maneuvers that bog everything down. He hasn't taken any of our ideas to make the encounter go faster. Oh, this DM. Oh, sweet summer child. We are now going on session 3 of combat. Over 6 hours for one combat encounter defending the town. And we still have 40 plus enemies to defeat. Tail end. Unlike that combat. Oh my gosh, that... Oh. Okay, so, GURPS is an absolute leviathan of a system. There are so many rules because you're supposed to pick and choose what you want to include and what you want to ignore. Especially for mass combat, you should be ignoring around half, 2/3 of the combat rules. Never, ever play GURPS raw. GURPS was not intended to be played raw. That's not how it works. I mean, I guess if you force it to, it can work that way, but work is doing a lot of work in that sentence. I gotta stop making myself laugh. That's the best joke in this video. I'm sorry, it's all downhill from here. Anyway, this was more of a GM problem than a system problem. GURPS can be great. I encourage anyone and everyone to look it up. It's fantastic. Just don't do this. Don't play it raw. Please? For me. Do it for me. Let's move on. Our last story today comes with a trigger warning. There is a lot of explicit homophobia in this story. There are slurs. They will be blurred out in the images, and I will be using this sound effect whenever they would be happening. That aside, here we go. This is posted by the user Short-Haired Shaggy, and it's entitled, "The Time I Was Attacked for Introducing a Gay Character into My Campaign." Now you might be thinking that's just a verbal attack. You'd be wrong. Tale start. Trigger warning. Homophobia. Lots of homophobia. I've been running a homebrew D&D for about 3 years now. This all took place fairly early on in the campaign. Just a bit of context. The players are a mixed bag of political leanings, not that mixed, as you'll see, but we've avoided out-of-character disagreement because we're all just in it to have fun. Except for that one time. I DM for a group of 5. Chuck, Barry, I get it, Hagrid. These names won't come into play here. One day, a player brought their friend, who was interested in D&D. Player seemed genuinely interested in the game, so we went over his character and worked him into the story. The party entered a tavern after completing their latest quest, and met the new character, and decided to have a drink and talk. New guy says to the barkeep,
"This is a fine establishment you have here."
This is where it went wrong. You'll see why I gave him that voice in just a moment. The barkeep responds,
Thank you. My partner and I worked hard to build it. I'm glad you appreciate it.
New guy loses his crap a little.
"Are these a couple running this bar?"
I say, well, he did look at the half-elven gentleman pouring drinks at the other end of the bar, but let's take it easy. There's nothing wrong with that. And the DM is right here.
"Like hell there's not. I throw my drink in his face and call him a..."
And this is the point where I would have just kicked the player. No questions. Just gone immediately. The barkeep says,
That's quite enough of that, sir. You need to leave. Now.
He decided to attack the barkeep because
"I don't back down from..."
I tell him that would be a bad idea. The barkeep is known as a bit of a local legend around here, and was an adventurer for many years. I love it when NPCs are retired adventurers. I think that's just neat. He attacks anyway, and is unconscious in 1 round. The party was level 4 or 5. The barkeep was a level 16 fighter. The barkeep tells the party that their friend is 86th from the bar and they need to carry him out. Surprised he's still alive, frankly. Player is fuming, ranting, and telling me that I shouldn't have in my game. I should know better than to shove that crap down people's throats. Says if that's the kind of crap I'm going to pull, he won't be back. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, sweaty. I say, that's probably for the best. If you can't handle imaginary gay people, I don't think I want you here. That's when he attacked me. It didn't end well for him, and the campaign has carried on without a hitch ever since, though we haven't had many guest players either. Tail end. Oh look, assault. All over gay people existing. I guess that's kinda accurate to real life sometimes, much as I wish it wasn't. This was a rough one, but these kind of players absolutely need to be called out and, honestly, driven from the scene as a whole. If they want to have their homophobic D&D, they can do it in private with their homophobic friends. This guy embodied a certain stereotype. He believed that there were two sexualities, straight and political. Which is nonsense, obviously. There's a lot more than that. This man needs therapy, probably. Seems like he has a lot of deep-seated issues to work through. Not to mention, the bartender only described his partner as his partner. That could have meant business partner. Obviously, it didn't, and including gay people in your campaigns, just as regular NPCs, is good. It gives your world more life, and it can really flesh out a situation or a location more than without. On that note, speaking of gay NPCs, I am hereby giving all of my viewers permission to use Foxy as an NPC in your games, under one condition, a very important condition. She must be a lesbian. No men. I just hope some of you take advantage of that. Ooh, if you do, I would love to hear about it. Please let me know. And that will be the end of this week's Horror Story Friday. Don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I finally hit 1,000. Also, let me know what you thought in the comments below. There is also the FoxyBard Discord server. It's very active and we would love to see all of you there. The link to that is down in the description. I'm working on the bonus, super extra special, chocolatey fudge coated, amazing 1,000 subscriber special, so look for that in the next few days. It really depends on when I can get it done. But until that time comes, let's douse the fire and get back to our own adventures.